Now, there's a couple of things I want people to understand about when you're looking at all of these documents. There's a lot of people that were mentioned on this. And in fact, I'm going to pull up a list right now. This comes from PBS. I don't trust PBS, but they do give a brief list of people that are on here that are relevant to the topic. It says a list of powerful men named in the Epstein files from Elon Musk to former Prince Andrew. So the Andrew Mountain Windsor, again, formerly known as Britain's Prince Andrew, has long been dogged by questions about his relationship with Epstein, including allegations from the late Virginia Roberts Guffey that she was trafficked by Epstein and instructed to have, relations. Again, some people have asked me, why do I use certain words other than other ones? It's because they tend to get throttled if we don't on YouTube. Relations with Mountain Windsor when she was 17. Okay, so she was one of the most she was one of the victims from the Epstein that had came out and had been very, very vocal. And she was willing to share her story, right? A lot of these victims were not. And you can understand why a minor would not want to be known for this. But Virginia Roberts Guffey was. And again, she died under somewhat curious circumstances. We'll just put it this way. But there was even more information that came out because there's now pictures. There's a lot of pictures that have been put out of, there's one picture of him kneeling over a minor. And again, Sarah Ferguson. In March of 2011, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, made a public apology for letting Jeffrey Epstein pay off some of her debts. Both she and her ex-husband, the former Prince Andrew, had come under tremendous public scrutiny for continuing a friendly relationship with Epstein after he pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from an underage girl. We're going to talk about this prosecution later because there's another thing too that we have to look at here, and that is kind of the line of there's a line that a lot of people draw in the sand where there was pre-Epstein conviction and post-Epstein conviction. So pre-Epstein conviction, is there a world where you could have known Epstein under circumstances different from what was going on Epstein Island or at his various residences? So for instance, if Epstein is showing up at the same soirées and parties that you're at where nothing nefarious is going on, right? People have this idea that if Epstein was there, something illegal was going on. No, Epstein had a lot of money. We're not even sure how he got all of it, but we think we have some good ideas. He had a lot of money. He had a lot of access to power. And so it's reasonable to understand that Epstein could be at events where other powerful people would be and get pictures taken and do other things like that. That doesn't automatically mean that you knew everything Epstein was doing or that you were buddy-buddy with him or anything else. And it's important to make that distinction. Now, once Epstein gets convicted of soliciting, from an underage person or relations, gosh dang it, from an underage person, now there's a point where if you're still maintaining friendly relations with him, now we have more questions. Because it's not as if he was just randomly accused, right? I've known people that were accused of things where it was almost immediately thrown out of court. Does that mean you're not allowed to be friends with that person anymore? No, of course not. Right? You are entitled to your day in court. Well, Epstein had his day in court and was convicted. He took a plea deal, but he was convicted. Not to mention the fact that there is also overwhelming evidence, like Epstein had developed a reputation long before this to where if you were still hanging out with him and you were still buddy-buddy with him, that causes me to ask some questions, right, about your judge of character. And this is where other people too, that I generally support and generally like, have had email correspondence with Epstein after his conviction, right, which call into question, why would you be doing this? Why would you continue to correspond in a friendly manner with him after this? Why when it was becoming more and more public knowledge that he was not only, engaging in the same parties you went to or knew the same powerful people, right, or able to invest or spend money on things, but he was actually engaging in a lot of nefarious activity. Why would you continue to put yourself in his orbit? And that's a legitimate question. Let's be honest. Prices haven't just gone up. They have launched into orbit over the last several years. And if you're like most Americans, you've probably had to lean on credit cards just to cover gas or the power bill. But if you own a home, American Financing can help. They're a family-owned mortgage lender that's been around 25 years and are licensed in all 50 states. And they help homeowners use their home's equity to pay off high interest debt. And their customers save about $800 a month on average. Their agents aren't on commission, so they're not trying to sell you something you don't need. There's no upfront or hidden fees. And thanks to in-house underwriting, you may be able to close in as fast as 10 days and maybe even delay 2 mortgage payments in the process. So stop drowning in interest and call 888-961-4143. That's 888-961-4143, or go to americanfinancing.net/MTA, NMLS 182334. Elon Musk, the billionaire Tesla founder, turns up at least a few times in Friday's document releases, notably in email exchanges in 2012 and 2013, in which he discussed visiting Epstein's infamous Caribbean island compound. But it's not immediately clear if the island visits took place. Spokespersons for Musk companies Tesla and X didn't respond to emails seeking comment Friday or Saturday. Musk has maintained that he repeatedly turned down the disgraced financier's overtures. Epstein tried to get me to go to his island and I refused. He posted on X in 2025. Okay. Couple of things can be true at once. There is no question that Musk was pushing for the Epstein files to be released. He was, and I think he deserves credit for that. But there was also email transactions that came out between Musk and either Jeff Epstein himself or other people. And again, this is the part where it's important to ask questions here, because the conviction for Jeffrey Epstein took place in 2008. That was when the Florida conviction came out. That was public knowledge. These emails were 2012 and 2013. And Elon Musk was not just, giving him a tour of the SpaceX facility. Because again, Epstein had a lot of contacts that would be important to people that were engaging in a variety of different industries and politics and everything else. Musk was specifically asking about visiting the island. Musk had emails to Musk, or at least in the email dump, and I haven't heard Musk deny the veracity of the emails yet, where he was talking about visiting the island. He was talking about going there with his wife. There was one email where Epstein had said, I don't know if Tallulah would be comfortable with the ratios there. And, that's obviously a reference to the number of women that are there and things like that. And Musk responds with, she won't have a problem with the ratio. And so it's also important to understand that Musk has had something of an interesting view of sexual activity, let's put it that way, between his multiple marriages, between all the children he has, between, the way he looks at the future of humanity. And so it seems obvious in these email transactions that Elon Musk was not just, getting an invitation from Jeffrey Epstein and turning it down, but actively seeking out an opportunity to go there to one of the parties he was having. And so that calls into question. Now, there has been no evidence that I'm aware of at this point, at the time of filming, that Elon Musk actually went there. So let's imagine a scenario where Elon Musk says, hey, I just know Epstein from visiting SpaceX. I wasn't following all the other stuff. I wasn't following the Florida trial in 2008. I just heard that he throws wild parties in the Caribbean, and so I was going to go. But then when I found out it was really bad, I didn't. Okay. Again, some of that can be a little bit hard to believe that you wouldn't have any idea of what Epstein was actually engaged in, especially someone that powerful who theoretically you would think would have people that was actually tracking this down. By the same token, Elon was also pushing for the Epstein files to be released. Now, maybe you could argue that he didn't think he would be mentioned or that his emails wouldn't be a part of it. But again, it's something to be concerned about. Another one is Richard Branson, the billionaire founder of the Virgin Group, a global conglomerate, exchanged numerous emails with Epstein. In 2013, Branson invited Epstein to his own private Caribbean island, which regularly hosts large conferences, charity events, and business meetings. Anytime you are in the area, we would love to see you, wrote, as long as you bring your harem. So again, this goes into the whole idea of everyone knew what Epstein was known for, right? If you're some guy that's just going about his life in, rural America, you might have some vague inclination of Epstein and what he was about, or you might not have ever heard of him. But if you're in the scene, if you're in the world that Epstein inhabits, you know that he's known for things. And one of the things he's known for are these parties. One of the things he's known for is procuring women. Now, some of these women were of age. That I don't think that makes it right, but some of these women were of age And so he at least was, but many others were underage. And again, we don't have to speculate on whether or not he did that. He was convicted of it. Let me see. Donald Trump. It's been long known that Epstein was friends with Trump before the two had a falling out. The new trove of documents contain thousands of references to Trump, much of which sheds little additional light on the men's relationship. They included emails in which Epstein and others shared news articles about Trump, commented on his policies, on his politics, or gossip about him and his family. So this is the other thing that needs to be understood about the way this is being reported. A lot of people are saying like, oh, Trump is mentioned thousands of times. Okay, well, Trump doesn't have any say on whether or not other people within Epstein's group are mentioning Trump. All right, Trump is not culpable for what other people are saying about Trump in emails to each other that get dropped in this file. And that's an important distinction, right? With each one of these, what you need to look at is not just number of times he's mentioned. That's an interesting metric, but it doesn't really tell us a whole lot until you dig in. The one that was kind of used as more of a damning thing with Trump is Maxwell and Epstein apparently visiting Mar-a-Lago and bringing a woman with them that from the conversations that were taking place made it apparent that they were trying to get a relationship or whatever between Trump and this girl. Now, from other sources, it looks like that not only did Trump not take them up on this offer, but that Trump barred Jeffrey or Epstein from Mar-a-Lago sometime after that encounter, right? Again, if I've got my times or my dates mixed up on this, please let me know. But from what I understand is that the very exchange that people are referencing is one of the things that led to the falling out between Trump and Epstein, was this idea that they were obviously trying to push this girl on him. And I don't recall the age of the girl. I don't think she was underage. But again, it's this case of Epstein and Maxwell once again being associated with this procuring, young women for rich, powerful, influential men. The document also included a range of uncorroborated stories involving many different celebrities and somewhat fantastical scenarios, occasionally with notations indicating what follow-up, if any, was done by agents. Another thing that's important to understand is that a lot of the things that made it into the Epstein files was, again, if the FBI got reports from somebody mentioning Epstein, that's in the Epstein files. So before the 2020 election, all of a sudden there's this flurry of people calling tip lines to the FBI implicating Donald Trump with Epstein. There's a lot of notes too on some of those files that the FBI put out. And granted, some of the redactions are weird, but there's a lot of things under there that says, yeah, we don't find the veracity of claims to be, good. We don't find the reliability of the source to be trustworthy. So again, when you're looking at tips, when you're looking at intelligence, you're looking at things like, there's a couple of different criteria you look at. One is the veracity of the claim. One is the reliability of the source. So what you want, and we have different numbers associated with it, but what you want is a high trust source providing information which can be verified by multiple independent sources. And what that means is it's another source that doesn't have a connection to your primary source. Or the information they can provide you can be verified through some other means of intelligence gathering. So technological intelligence gathering. Signals intelligent, right? Electronics intelligence. So there's all kinds of what we call ints in the intelligence space. So if I have a high trust source, which means they have access and placement to the information that they're giving me, right? So someone can say, oh, I have information on the moon landing, right? But they've never worked for NASA. They don't know anybody in NASA. That's not maybe their information is true, but they don't have sufficient access and placement to give me a high degree of reliability score for them. So when a source has good access and placement, they're giving me intelligence that actually makes sense for the other things that I know. They've given me intelligence before, which is proven to be true. Right now, my source, high reliability. And when they give me claims that match up with other things that I know, the veracity of that claim goes up significantly. When I can then independently verify it through other sources, now we have high trust source giving me good information, right? That's kind of we break it down. That's a very rudimentary explanation, but it checks out. You can check with somebody in the intel world if you don't trust me. there was a lot of claims that went around about Donald Trump where they were looking at it going, this person has, this person has been denied before because they have multiple psychological breakdowns, or they've been convicted before of providing false information, or there's someone that just randomly calls in tips and it usually always ends up being garbage, right? So a lot of the things that came in were just clearly trying to implicate Trump before an election. And the other thing that this is where I go, where I think the left has really screwed themselves on this, because the left has been so willing to lie. Hands up, don't shoot. Oh, Renee Good was just trying to drop her kids off at school. Oh, they're always willing to lie if it suits them politically, or misrepresent if it suits them politically, or lie by omission if it suits them politically. I don't trust them anymore when they make claims. And so even when they make a good claim, I'm skeptical because I don't trust the person, right? This is one of the problems that we get in the intel world. And I know this because we dealt with sources in places like Iraq. And if you had a source that had a low reliability rate, a low trustworthy rate, they might still give you good information, but you couldn't categorize it as high unless you could find other independent sources that you could trust, or other means of gathering intelligence on something that you could trust in order to verify the source, okay? All that to say, a lot of random claims got put in there that I think were just meant to be character assassination rather than having high veracity. Bill Clinton. Like Trump, Clinton spent time with Epstein more than 2 decades ago, including flying occasionally on his private jet and seeing him at the White House. Clinton also denied any knowledge of Epstein's wrongdoing. Clinton's representatives say the former president broke off relations with Epstein after the first round of criminal charges in 2006. Stephen Tisch, New York Giants co-owner, is mentioned more than 400 times in the files released Friday. Correspondence between the shows shows Epstein offered to connect Tisch to numerous women over the years. In one email in 2013 with the subject line, Ukrainian girl, Epstein encouraged Tisch to contact a particular woman whose physical beauty he praised in crude terms. And then Tisch asked in reply, pro or civilian. So right there is kind of an acknowledgement by Tisch. Again, if the emails are all real, an acknowledgement by Tisch that he understands the difference between, is this a prostitute or is this just some random girl that he's procured? Casey Wasserman, the president of the committee for the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles, exchanged flirty emails with Epstein confidant Ghislaine Maxwell. Friday's document released shows. In a 2003 exchange, Wasserman wrote to Maxwell, I think of you all the time, so what do I have to do to see you in a tight leather outfit? Blah, blah, blah. Again, some of this is 2003. The question there is, before the criminal convictions, would it be possible for people to know these people and not be aware of criminal wrongdoing? Let's face it. Some of the people that scream the loudest about this stuff in places like Hollywood exactly is Hollywood is not exactly known for its sexual purity, right? So some of these people look at these things as, these people are already willing to engage in what we might call immoral or deviant behavior that is not necessarily illegal or is illegal adjacent, right? Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, and his wife turn up frequently in the documents released Friday showing they stayed in regular contact with Epstein for years, including well after his 2008 guilty plea for sex crimes in Florida. Among the correspondence are plans for a 2017 stay at Epstein's New York residence. Other missives discuss mundane logistics for other visits, meetings, and phone calls with Epstein. So apparently Epstein was also helping Ehud Barak try to, get work after he was becoming prime minister. And one of the things that Epstein is schooling him on is this whole idea of how he needs to think about his life post politics and how he uses his leverage and the people that he helped and everything else in order to make money. Larry Summers, Clinton's former Secretary of the Treasury and the one-time president of Harvard, is another of Epstein's well-known longtime acquaintances. The new documents are full of references to meetings and dinners between the two men. A previously released trove of documents shows Summers emailing Epstein in 2019 after the financier had been charged with sexual abuse of minors to discuss his interactions with a woman, writing, he'd told her, awfully coy you are. Epstein replied, you reacted well. The other thing too that's come out with this, and it's not in this list right here because this list is mainly about certain powerful individuals connected to this. There were other lists where you had people talking about torture. You had people clearly making references to things that could be associated with S&M. So some pretty dark stuff, right? It's not just the deviancy. it's not just the stuff with underage minors, which is horrific in and of itself, but it's also the idea of incorporating a lot of other deviant and potentially illegal activities into this, potentially being done by minors and people kind of freely exchanging emails about it. And I'm going to get to why that point is also problematic. Lutnick, who's the Commerce Secretary under Trump, we were talking about Lutnick and his comments. In fact, we were praising Lutnick for his comments at the WEF. Lutnick came out and said, limited interactions with Mr. Epstein in the presence of his wife and has never been accused of doing wrongdoing. So the idea is that Lutnick once gave an interview where he said that, when he met Epstein with his wife, they walked away and both of them basically said, I'm never going to have any dealings with that evil man. But then there were follow-on emails between them. And so this is the problem a lot of these guys are coming into, is that they're saying, yes, I knew Epstein. Yes, I met Epstein. Yes, he invited me. Yes, he tried to get me in a circle. Instantly saw that it was evil and wanted nothing to do with him. But then there was follow-on correspondence. And so this is the part where it's like, okay, your trustworthiness now as a source on your own behalf goes down when you get caught in these lies. Sergey Brin, the billionaire Google co-founder, made plans to meet with Epstein and Maxwell at his townhouse in New York years before he was publicly accused of sexually abusing underage girls. Emails show. In one exchange in 2003, Maxwell invited him to join her at a screening of the Renee Zellweger film Down with Love in New York. This is the part, too, where I think we need to understand something. Again, if you are seeing this guy Epstein in all these different circles, but you are involved in those circles, but you're not involved with Epstein, it is possible that you would think, because here's the other thing, Epstein is actively reaching out to these people, trying to do them favors. So he's reaching out to them going, oh, I can connect you with so-and-so. Oh, can I just tell you as someone where I have people contacting me all the time, and I'm nowhere near at this level, but I have people in politics and I have people within the social media space contacting me all the time saying, oh, let me connect you with this person. Let me connect you with this person. Right. So it would be easy to find transactions of somebody offering to connect me with oh, that would be cool. That sounds good. Oh, I didn't realize you knew them. And if I don't know that person that well, I might give a polite response where it's like, okay, yeah. Or you might say, yeah, we'll go have dinner together if you don't know. The question is what did you know and when, and how did it impact your behavior? Because I've seen people I know and like take pictures with people I know and don't like. But I don't know if they just happen to be at the same event together and they asked to take a picture or somebody snapped it or whatnot. That's not the same as evidence of a relationship or criminal wrongdoing. And so I'm capable of making that distinction. So again, when it talks about Sergey right here, the evidence that dropped in this doesn't look like it is reasonable to assume that Sergey could have not known anything about what Epstein was doing, had a meeting long before the criminal convictions took place, and then didn't do any follow-up. That's one of the things a lot of people are looking for here is when did you meet him and what did the follow-up look like after he was convicted in 2008? Steve Bannon, one-time advisor to Trump, exchanged hundreds of friendly texts with Epstein, some sent months before the financier's 2019 arrest and jailhouse suicide. The two discussed politics, travel, and a documentary. Bannon was said to be planning that would help salvage Epstein's reputation. I don't know if that's true. One 2018 exchange, for example, focused on Trump's threats at the time to oust Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. In a 2019 message, Bannon asked Epstein if he could supply his plane to pick him up in Rome. So it's clearly that there was some interaction between Bannon and them, but it was largely on the political side, not necessarily visiting the island. There's a lot more in here that we can go to. Well, there's one more on this one. That's Miroslav Lajak, a national security advisor to the Slovakian prime minister. He resigned Saturday after his past communication with Epstein appeared in Friday's document release. Opposition parties and a nationalist partner in Fico's government coalition had called for him to step down. Again, part of the problem with some of this is why are you still hanging out with this guy when he's trafficked minors?